So you want to purchase a home, but you don't have the money to cover down payment. So you look into down payment assistance. Well, I'm going to tell you in this episode all about what that down payment assistance is really costing you and what you have to look forward to. So let's get into it. When it comes to down payment assistance, first and foremost, you have to have decent credit in order to qualify for the majority of down payment assistance programs out there. So if your credit is horrible, that's step one. Let's work on getting that credit score to where it needs to be. So for a lot of down payment assistance programs, a 640 credit score will generally qualify you for just about the majority of them. I'll say just about all of them. I don't know all of them, so it's hard for me to say all of them, but every down payment assistance program that I've come across, a 640 will qualify you for it. So if you have at least a 640 credit score, that will get you in good standing, at least of checking that box for meeting the credit requirement for getting that down payment assistance. Now, if you don't have a 640, there are some other options that you can utilize to be able to get down payment assistance, because there are different programs that have different requirements. There are some that you can get it with 620 or 600. I know of one program that you can actually get down payment assistance with a 580 credit score, and they'll do a manual underwrite, meaning that even if you don't get automatically approved through your lender, they will manually underwrite your file as long as it meets the manual underwriting guidelines. And so that's something that also could benefit you in terms of helping you to get down payment assistance. So that's number one, is to work on your credit. Make sure that your credit is at a level to where you can actually get that down payment assistance. The second thing is how much down payment assistance you actually can get. That's going to depend upon the program. There are three different options that I will discuss. One being the set amount that you typically get. So depending upon the down payment assistance program, I'll talk about Georgia Dream since I live in Georgia, and that is one of the programs available in Georgia. It's called the Georgia Dream. So under the Georgia Dream standard, you get $10,000 if you qualify. You can get a little bit more if you fall under a certain category of being like a teacher or educator, rather, someone who works in the school system, or a protector, firefighter, police officer, something like that. So, but for everyone else, it's $10,000. So that's the set amount down payment assistance. You have some programs where it's a blanket $15,000 that you can get. Some go up to $20,000. It really depends on the program. So that's the first thing, is the set amount. The second thing is 3.5% of the purchase price. So that 3.5% is the amount that's needed to cover the minimum down payment requirement for an FHA loan. So if you purchase a $300,000 home, 3.5% is $10,500. That's how much you would get to cover that down payment. If you purchase a $400,000 home, you would get $14,000 because that's the 3.5% of $400,000. So just so you have an idea, that's what the 3.5% is. Now, there's a third option for down payment assistance, depending upon the program again that you select, which is a 5% option. That 5% option will allow you to get not only the 3.5% that would cover the minimum down payment requirement for an FHA loan, it will also allow you to have an extra 1.5% that you can put toward closing costs. And that's key, because if we're looking at cost, 3.5%, let's just use a $400,000 home, for example. 3.5% is $14,000. Now, let's say that closing costs are 3%. Now, closing costs are not always 3%. Sometimes they can be higher, they could be lower, but let's just say 3%. 3% of that 400,000 is $12,000. So you add that 14,000 to that 12,000, you're at $26,000. And so a lot of people don't have $26,000. It could be more than 26,000 because there are a couple other things to factor in. One is the interest rate cost. There could be a cost associated with getting the interest rate that you need, i.e. you might have to pay discount points in order to get that interest rate that you're needing to purchase that home. And so now you've got 26,000, you might have to have interest rate costs. But let's say you don't have any interest rate costs, so you can get your interest rate at no cost. Another factor that you need to be aware of and possibly plan for are real estate commissions, because post the NAR lawsuit settlement, and all the wonderful things that came out with that, if you can't tell, that's the sarcasm in my voice, is that you might have an increase in the number of sellers that now don't want to pay real estate commissions. And so, just to be clear a little bit on the NAR settlement, sellers were never required to pay real estate commissions. It was always optional. It was always something that sellers, really the way that it worked, particularly with Georgia, is that sellers agreed to pay a commission to the listing agent. And the listing agent would in turn share that commission with the buyer's agent. So let's say, for example, that a listing agent and a seller agreed on a certain commission. That listing agent would then receive that commission upon the sale of the home from the proceeds of the sale. And then the listing agent in the contract phase would agree with the buyer's agent, I'm going to share half my commission with you. I'm going to share a portion of my commission with you. But it was never set up that the seller was like, okay, I'm going to pay your commission and I'm going to pay the buyer's agent's commission. It was set up that the seller was paying the commission to the listing agent, and the listing agent shared that commission with the buyer's agent. I can't speak for every state, but I know in a lot of states that's how it worked. Definitely in Georgia, that's how it worked as well. But the seller was never obligated to pay commission to anyone, not even their own listing agent. Of course, the listing agent's not going to work for free, so you're probably not going to get someone who's going to do the job you need them to do. But in terms of how much they paid, the seller could have always said, you know what, I'm only going to offer this much in commission. I'm going to offer less. I'm not going to give more. I'm not going to give enough for you to potentially share with the buyer's agent or whatever it might be. So that was always an optional thing. But moving on from there, post the settlement for the NAR lawsuit and everything, which honestly didn't change much of anything other than commissions are now not allowed to be publicly posted in the multiple listing service, or MLS as it's more commonly known. You might have to plan for paying your own agent's commission. How much is that going to cost you? That depends, because again, it's negotiable. There is no set amount for how much anyone has to pay anyone to do work for them. I mean, if you think about it, it works kind of like everything else. Everything is negotiable. You go to the store has, prices for everything, but I mean, you're probably not going to have much luck trying to negotiate. But if you wanted to go in there and say, I'm not willing to pay this, but I'll pay this lesser amount, maybe they negotiate with you. In a lot of countries, they will negotiate with you. In the US, depending upon the store you're going to, probably not. But if you're at a yard sale, you probably have a little bit more negotiating power. But whatever it is, when it comes to real estate, those commissions are negotiable. So you might find a buyer's agent that's willing to provide services to you for, 1% commission, 2% commission, 3% commission. Whatever that percentage is that you negotiate with them, it's negotiable. And so that's something that you might have to plan for when you are now looking at purchasing a home. Just want to put that out there. Now, there are ways that you can, first of all, you might have a lot of sellers out there that are still willing to help pay for the cost of the buyer's agent's commission, because that will essentially also open them up to having more buyers that are now able to look at their properties, because buyers who aren't able to afford their own agent's commission might not look at your particular property in terms of being a viable option for them to purchase. So you have sellers that might still offer those commissions, or offer to pay enough to the listing agent that the listing agent can now share that commission with the buyer's agent. But if not, there are some other ways that you can also finance that into the loan. A little bit outside the scope of what I'm going to go through in this podcast episode, but just know that that's another consideration you might have to make. So with that extra 5% that I was talking about, that extra 1.5% is not going to cover everything, but it can go a good little ways in terms of helping to cover some of the closing costs and some of the increased costs that you're going to have with down payment assistance. Yes, increased costs that you are going to have with down payment assistance. So when it comes to down payment assistance, closing costs are typically going to be higher. The reason is because the mortgage lenders, mortgage brokers that are offering you the down payment assistance, oftentimes the money is not coming from them. It's coming from a third party. And that third party who's financing the loan, in many cases, controls things such as the interest rate or other factors of the loan that normally, if they were controlled by the lender, that's how the lender would get paid. For example, there are through origination fees, processing fees, and interest rate pricing. That's how a lot of lenders tend to make money. However, if some of these things are controlled by the third party that's giving the money for the down payment assistance, now in order for the lender to make a profit, the lender has to charge what's called a broker fee. And so that broker fee can vary. It could be 2%. It could be more than 2%. It could be less than 2%. But that broker fee is what allows the lender that's originating your loan to be able to get paid on the transaction for all of the work that they're doing. Because let's say that you're working with a program where that program's controlling what the interest rate is and what the pricing is for that interest rate. So now your lender's not able to get compensated for that piece of the transaction. In order for everyone who has a role to play in your loan to get paid for the role that they play, a broker fee needs to be charged. That 2% on a $400,000 home is going to be $8,000 that would be added to the closing costs. So if you were only getting $10,000 of down payment assistance, and now $8,000 of that is going to be covering a broker fee, that only really equates to $2,000 that you're actually receiving in down payment assistance. I mean, that's great, but it's not much that's going to go far in terms of helping to cover anything when it comes to closing costs. So that's something that you want to be aware of, is the increased cost with down payment assistance. One way that you compensate for that or help to combat the increased cost for down payment assistance is that you ask for the seller to contribute to the closing cost. And this is something that's done in the negotiation part of the home buying process. When your agent is negotiating on the terms of the sale with the listing agent, then this is the time when you're in that negotiating, before you get under contract, that you have your agent to negotiate for the seller to pay however much you need them to pay in closing costs. If you want to know how much it needs to be, you just talk to your loan officer and ask them, hey, how much are closing costs estimated to be? How much is down payment estimated to be? And how much am I going to get in down payment assistance? So after the down payment assistance and everything, how much money am I going to need to come to the closing table with? That's the real question you want to get at. After we factor in down payment assistance, how much cash am I going to need to close on this home? Your loan officer will give you that information, and now you know what you need to negotiate. Let's say that your loan officer says, okay, after down payment assistance and everything, you're still going to need about $15,000. Okay, I'll need $15,000. So I've got $6,000 in the bank right now, which means I need the seller to come up with the other $9,000 or more if I don't want to be broke after I purchase this home and I want to have a little bit of money left over in the bank. Maybe you ask for the seller to kick in $10,000 or $11,000 toward closing costs. And then you begin the negotiating piece. There are a lot of different ways you can negotiate it, also outside of the scope of what we're going to be discussing in this podcast. But we'll have that information in a future podcast, so just stay tuned because it's going to come up. But there are some ways that you can negotiate to help compensate for that increase in the closing costs that a lot of people do have when it comes to down payment assistance. So Some things that you just need to be aware of. Obviously, you've got the down payment cost, you've got the closing cost, but then you have potential interest rate costs with discount points that you might have to pay, and your realtor fees that you also might have to pay depending upon whether or not the seller is willing to pay enough commission to the listing agent, and the listing agent being willing to share that commission with your agent so that you don't have to pay your agent's commission. Moving on from there, when it comes to down payment assistance and interest rates, be prepared for potentially having a little bit higher of an interest rate. It kind of also depends upon the type of down payment assistance that you use. For example, there are down payment assistance programs that are forgivable. There are down payment assistance programs that are repayable. If you get a forgivable option, it's high likelihood that you're going to have a higher interest rate because whoever's giving you the money, they're not getting that back from you, or they're not expecting to get it back from you. So they charge a higher interest rate to help compensate for the fact that they're giving you 10,000, 15,000, whatever it is, that they're not going to get back. Now, if you get a repayable option, it's possible your interest rate could be a little bit lower. But again, it's something that you want to be aware of because interest rates tend to weigh heavily on people's decision when it comes to purchasing a home. And a lot of people don't like the interest rates in the market that we're in right now. Obviously, interest rates being a little bit higher than what people would like, but they're actually not terrible. So that's just something that you really want to understand, that you don't necessarily have a lot of power over if you're using down payment assistance. Especially depending upon the down payment assistance program you're using. If you're paying your own down payment, you're paying your own closing costs, you're covering all of that yourself, then when it comes to your interest rate, there are a lot more options that you have. If you've got amazing credit, that opens up the door even more to the options that you have, because now you could potentially go conventional and get a lower monthly payment because maybe your mortgage insurance is going to be less and you don't have to pay that upfront mortgage insurance fee, which is getting financed into the loan and everything. And if this is, talking way up here at like a 10,000 level, don't worry about it. Just understand that the better your credit score is, the more options you have available to you. If you're paying your own down payment and you're not using down payment assistance, you also have more options available to you. When you take the down payment assistance route, that minimizes a little bit of the options that you have in terms of what your interest rates are going to be, how much you're going to be paying for your interest rates. For example, I'll use the Georgia Dream again. Georgia Dream actually has some pretty decent interest rates. Oftentimes, they'll be lower than what the market norm is. But nevertheless, Georgia Dream sets the interest rate. They tell you, okay, if you're using our down payment assistance program, this is the interest rate, period. There is no negotiating that. You pay what the interest rate is. It's one rate that you get for the program that you use, and that's what you pay if you want to use their down payment assistance. There are some other down payment assistance programs that might give you a few options. And it's like, if you want to take the higher option, maybe you can take the higher option without having to pay anything. And then if you want to take the middle option, you pay a little bit of money for that. And if you want to take the lower option, you pay a lot more money for that one. So there are different options, but you don't have a smorgasbord of options, so to speak, where it's like, okay, I don't really like how much the interest rate is now. I want a lower rate. Well, you're using down payment assistance. So down payment assistance is going to minimize how many options you have available to you in most cases. So just be prepared for that. You're not going to have the same amount of options, but the bigger objective is that you're going to be able to purchase the home. And that is going to be the more valuable thing that you're going to get out of this transaction. Not so much what you're going to be paying right now. There are always opportunities to be able to refinance or restructure that deal later on down the road into terms that are more favorable for you. However, you just prepare yourself that, closing costs are likely going to be higher, thousands of dollars higher. You're going to need for the seller to help contribute to those closing costs to make sure that you're actually benefiting from the down payment assistance, because using our one example again, if you're getting $10,000 of down payment assistance, but that adds $8,000 to the that you're paying in closing costs, you're only really getting $2,000 in down payment assistance. And 2,000 is not going to go a long way. So your down payment might be covered with the 10, but now your closing cost just went up by another $8,000. So you really do need those sellers to contribute to the closing cost to help you cover the increase in the closing cost as well. So just understand there are a few things that you need to be aware of in terms of the increased cost, the increased interest rate potentially, and first and foremost, having decent credit, because if you don't, you're automatically not going to be able to qualify. So step one, making sure you've got that good credit, and then moving on from there into just mentally preparing yourself for what you might need to go in negotiating with the seller for, so that you can get what you need to be able to cover the down payment assistance. So that's what I have for you. Hopefully this has been beneficial for you. If it has, please do give me a thumbs up, like and subscribe to the podcast, and stay tuned, because I'm always putting out more information that is going to help position you to build wealth through home ownership. My niche, if you will, tends to be on credit repair. I won't even say credit repair. I'll say credit education, because I personally don't make calls to give people or to repair people's credit. However, I provide information to people that will allow them to be able to repair their credit, because there's nothing that a credit repair company or agency can do that you are not able to do yourself. Everything that they're going to charge you, you know, 100, 150 bucks a month, 80 bucks a month, whatever it is, for the next 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, or whatever, is all something that you can actually do yourself. So I do more of the educating and teaching people what they need to do based off of where they're at right now with their credit, and who they need to reach out to so that they can get their credit to the point to where they're able to purchase a home. Because ultimately that's the goal, is to be able to purchase this asset that now is benefiting you, appreciating over time, and you know, it can have that impact on you, not just monetarily, but also in just the emotional aspect of it, the stability aspect of it, with those monthly payments that are not going to increase for your principal and interest, and you know, all the other non-tangible benefits that come from owning a home as well. So I'll leave it there, and I'll say to stay tuned. Oh, Tuesdays, I do did not want to forget that. So on Tuesdays, I am doing mortgage tips. They are tips that are going to help you be able to save money when it comes to purchasing a home, because money is definitely something that a lot of home buyers are conscious of these days with the cost of everything going up. So on Tuesdays, it's not going to be long. It's going to be up to a max of 30 minutes, but I'm going live on YouTube on Tuesdays, and I'm going to be putting out mortgage tips that help individuals be able to get the tips that they need to save hundreds of dollars on their monthly payment, which is actually what I spoke about this past Tuesday, or be able to save thousands or tens of thousands over, you know, just a few years of that mortgage that they have as well. So I'm giving tips on a lot of different stuff when it comes to mortgages that you definitely want to get. And another thing, you got to tune in live for the information. Not because it's better when it's live, but that's going to be the only way that you can get it. I am recording these, but I'm not posting the recordings. So the only way you can get the information is if you tune in live. So it's Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Make sure that you tune in. It's going to be well worth your 15 minutes, 30 minutes, maximum of 30 minutes, but it's going to be well worth your time. So thank you for taking the time to tune in. Take care. Be blessed. See you in the next episode.